I'm a full-time photographer, but I'm also a hobbyist photographer, so I really enjoy photographing everything. Somebody convinced me you couldn't make a living at it, and I didn't even consider studying in college, and so I actually have a degree in geology and Chinese. And uh, several years later, my dad was getting back into photography, and my brothers were. So I bought a camera and actually started a portrait business about the next day. And then I quit my job a year after that. I just went crazy with it. I bought a Nikon D90 and made over 100,000 pictures with it in the first year, and I've just been going gangbusters ever since. So. When I made this picture, some of the things that struck me were, of course, the butte at the top. And I've got somewhere I isolated just that butte. But when I isolated it, it's pretty flat. There's no clouds there. There's no real depth. And because I wasn't close to it, using a wide-angle lens, we don't have a lot of foreground if I just show the top of that butte. And so instead, I'm still using a telephoto lens. I'm using a 42.5 millimeter lens on a micro four thirds camera on my GH4, the Panasonic GH4. And so that's equivalent to like an 85 millimeter lens on a full frame camera. And so I wanted to focus on these rocks down here that are tumbling, and kind of the way that those lead up toward the butte. I liked the way that this light continues up there. And I loved the erosion down here, and then the layers of different sediments in there, and then the break in formations too. So this photograph, I told you I have a degree in geology. This photograph actually shows millions of years of history, going from the red sandstones up above down through the white and buff sandstones below. And I don't know, I love the way that those mix together, and the way that the roundness of these rocks is different from the square, harsh angles of the red rock above. I'm definitely using a tripod to shoot here. It's also an HDR photograph, so I've taken several exposures and combined them together in order to have the details in the darker areas as well as the bright areas. Using a telephoto lens like this is a great way to make a landscape photograph. It allows us to kind of compress things together and use the composition to show depth, rather than using a wide-angle lens, which uses foreshortening. We have to get really close to something to make it appear larger. And so instead, this allows everything to remain large. Like, we can see how large that rock is, because the trees down here are a third the size of the trees up around it, and we can interpret that's both big and farther away by our minds just naturally compare the sizes of these bushes and shrubs as we travel backward through the picture. And so, yeah, using a telephoto lens is a great way to make a landscape picture. And I wanted to have the appropriate amount of depth for this picture, but I also wanted to maintain good sharpness throughout the picture. And so I know that on my micro four thirds camera, shooting at f8 gives me the depth of field of f16 on a full frame camera, and f11 gives me the depth of field of f22 without the reduction in sharpness of shooting at f22. Like, we don't need to shoot at the very smallest aperture to get depth throughout a photograph. And so you need to know what your lens and camera combination provides in the realm of depth of field and sharpness, so that when you're presented with something, you can make the most of it without just stopping down all the way. Had I stopped down all the way to f22, I wouldn't have as much sharpness in that rock up there, and also in these rocks down here. It just wouldn't be quite as good. So I stopped down to f11 and focused about here. And with this lens at this distance, it's pretty much infinity focus anyway. So I don't have to worry about like focusing a third of the way into the picture, that kind of thing. people comparatively get to go here. And one thing I like about this being a nondescript rock, it's clearly the desert someplace, but it's not Delicate Arch, and it's not Mesa Arch, and it's not one of these famous places. And I like that because I get to present something totally original to people, but it's familiar, and they're not judging my photograph of Delicate Arch against all the billions of other photographs of Delicate Arch that's just a few miles from here. And so I get a clean slate, and I get to present something that I saw and felt. I think pictures of big places should be printed big, and I've talked about several stages of this photograph. I talked about what I was doing when I shot it, and I talked about what I did when I finished it, using HDR techniques to finish it, and I didn't tell you about all the local adjusting I've done. And so I have drawn our eyes into this S pattern using the local tools in Lightroom to dodge and burn and kind of draw our eyes to the brighter parts in this picture right now. But I mean, so that's 2/3 of the process: shooting and finishing, and then making a tangible photograph is really the last step in the process. And this is what I imagined when I click the shutter. I know that when I click that shutter, I'm not done. And we often talk about getting things right in the camera so that we don't have to fix them in Photoshop. And I believe in that. I believe in not fixing stuff in our processing tools. But we have never gotten it right in the camera. Like a camera picture isn't finished. This is a finished photograph. It's hanging on my wall. It's tangible. It's real. And I highly encourage people to do that. If you'd like to see more of my work, I teach a lot. I use photofocus.com to teach. I'm an author and editor there, so check out photofocus.com. We publish education articles 4 times a day for photographers, and it's free. It always has been for nearly 20 years, and it always will be. I also publish to Instagram and Twitter regularly, so catch up with me there at PhotoLevi on both Instagram and Twitter. And I'll probably be at a conference you're going to soon. I'll be out of Chicago coming up next. Highly recommend that one. And I'd love to see you sometime at one of those. You can also get some of my education at lynda.com or linkedinlearning.com. So I'd love to help you learn, and I'd love to see you on a photo walk or a shoot someplace in the future.